Hey, folks, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Happy Tuesday to everybody out there watching. Just say no to Birthright Senatorship. A lot of talk about Birthright citizenship, but now we have a new thing to talk about, which is Birthright Senatorship. Of course, I'm talking about Darline Graham, which I guess at some point somebody could do some sort of parody with Jolene and Darlene. I don't know. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but ever since we mentioned it yesterday, I noticed in the last 24 hours a lot of people are kind of upset. There's a lot of questions being asked about bloodlines, hereditary succession. Is America a monarchy? Here's the deal. It's not unprecedented what's going on right now. Obviously, we've had a history. America does have a history of powerful political families. But I don't think anybody is out there suggesting that powerful political families are a good thing. No, instead it's more about entrenched interests where the populist ideas of the people tend to get crushed. We're going to talk about that much more today on the show. Glad to be here. The Paul Harrell program starts right now.
Paul Harrell program.
Yes, all right. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. I want to remind everybody out there, the Paul Harrell program is powered by Healing Veterans Project. The Healing Veterans Project, you can go to healingveterans.us. That's healingveterans.us and become a part of the movement today where we're helping veterans get life healing red light therapy panels, the panels that the VA will not give them. The VA doesn't want them to have it. They would love them to have they'd love for them to have I don't know, Vicodin, opioids, that sort of thing. We'll tell you more about Healing Veterans Project a little later in the program. We're broadcasting live from the great state of Arkansas here on LFA TV. We're also over at the Paul Harrell Program YouTube page. Wherever you're watching, please subscribe, please share. Specifically, if you're watching on YouTube and Rumble, we want you to like the video, we want you to share the video, we want you to subscribe, do all of the things, help us get the message out. Really excited to do this. So, yeah, this thing with Darline Graham. By the way, I think she's dropped her married name now. She's going now with her maiden name because, it very much is, instead of Nordone, which is she's Darline Graham Nordone, she's now just Darline Graham because this is, somehow they're trying to piggyback off of Lindsey Graham's popularity, I guess. Or maybe it's just the emotional sentiment. We're going to tug at your emotional heartstrings to try to get you to keep somebody in power. And honestly, there's no way to say this. Darline Graham represents the status quo for a lot of people. I really don't care what she says. She's going to represent the status quo for a lot of entrenched and powerful interests. But there was a tweet that inspired this monologue, and I'll get to that here in a minute. But you have heard it said that history has a funny way of repeating itself, and that's exactly what's happened here, or at least it rhymes. So we're going to take a little flashback to little American history, but specifically Arkansas history, and this is just a coincidence that I'm an Arkansan, and I got this little bit of history from our fellow Arkansan, Jake Beckett, who was over on X. But back in 1931, Arkansas Senator Thaddeus Caraway died in office. Now, at the time, so what we've just experienced with Darline Graham getting the nod to finish out Lindsey Graham's term is not necessarily unprecedented. As a matter of fact, back in the 30s in America, it was quite common. It was almost an unwritten political tradition. If a senator died, his widow was often appointed to temporarily fill the seat. Now, in this case, everybody knows Lindsey Graham was not married and had the nickname Lady G. So it isn't apples to apples exactly. This is probably the first time it's ever happened to somebody's sister, I guess. But anyway, back in the day, back in the 30s, it was seen as a gesture of respect. No doubt, that's what President Trump initially said when we just thought Darline Graham was just going to be around until January. And now, who knows, she may now be around for decades. But it was thought of as a gesture of respect, a bridge until people could choose a permanent replacement. Okay, so, America's always had a heart. We've always wanted to respect those who've served, and appointing their widow was a way to do that, finish out the term. And that's exactly what happened back in Arkansas in the 1930s. Hattie Caraway was the housewife. She was a housewife, no experience politically, no elected political experience. She was appointed to finish her husband's term. And few people expected anything more, just kind of like what we were all expecting a week ago. But then one of the most colorful political figures in American history stepped into the stage, a man by the name of Huey Long, the kingfish from Louisiana. So Huey Long saw an opportunity. Now, who knows what his motives actually were? Personal, political, obviously, probably both. So he recognized, though, that backing Hattie Caraway would embarrass the Arkansas political establishment that was, at that time, led by Senate Democratic leader, for lack of a better term, Joe T. Robinson. So Huey Long then campaigned across Arkansas on her behalf, and against all expectations, she actually won. She didn't just finish her husband's term, she earned a full 6-year term and ultimately served in the Senate for more than a decade. So the idea that a senator's family member inheriting political momentum isn't a new one. I would say sister is, maybe there's another example of somebody's sibling, but definitely their spouse. Lindsey Graham didn't have a spouse. So there's that. But we have seen at least something like it before, okay? But today, we're watching this happen all over again. It is another Senate succession unfold, and this time it involves, obviously, Lindsey Graham's sister, Darline Graham. And most Americans, and frankly, most South Carolinians, we know very little about her. I mean, I'm an American, not a South Carolinian, but I've never even heard of this woman up until last week. So before voters have had much opportunity to evaluate her qualifications, she's thrown her hat in the ring as the natural heir to one of the most powerful Senate seats in America. That should make all of us pause, because America was never intended to be a country where political bloodlines carry the day. Let me say that again. America was never intended, at least no one ever said it out loud, to be a country where political bloodlines carry the day. We literally broke away from a monarchy 250 years ago. So the idea, it's very ingrained in America, we don't have royal families. Or we're not supposed to. I mean, you can practically say we do. The Clintons, the Kennedys, the Obamas now. I mean, you can definitely say that we do, but are we supposed to? Most Americans, we don't like this. Average people don't like this. We don't like that your bloodline somehow means that you get to rule over us forever. We're not supposed to have royal families. We don't have hereditary titles. There's no such thing as a birthright senatorship. But is there? Is there really? We're about to find out. So, as I said earlier, okay, a familiar last name, okay, that's going to earn someone a hearing, right? That's going to earn you a hearing. When Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced for president, everybody certainly listened. It may even reflect years spent around public service, as that was the RFK deal. But a surname alone should never become a substitute for earning the trust of voters through ideas, accomplishments, and leadership. I mean, this is what we don't have with her. I don't even know who this woman is. Again, the uncomfortable feeling, and this is what I was trying to describe yesterday on the show. It is an uncomfortable feeling. It just makes you just, I don't know. It's just cringe. It's such a cringeful feeling that many people have right now. And it's because of Darline Graham. And it may not be about Darline Graham personally, because we don't know who she is personally. It's about the system, isn't it? It feels in some ways like Lindsey Graham is still dictating events from the grave with the help of President Trump, who has told South Carolinians Darline is his pick, just like he backed warmonger Lindsey Graham. Perception matters with things like this. Americans instinctively recoil from the idea that a Senate seat can simply pass from one family member to another as though it were an inheritance. Did Lindsey put this in his will? That was my question this morning. Do you think he maybe this was in his will somewhere? If at all possible, give the seat to my sister and encourage her to run. She'd be great at it. And there's another question that surrounds all of this. It deserves to be asked, at least, is who benefits from continuity? And make no mistake, that's what this is. This is obviously a bloodline succession, an attempt at one anyway. And so there's going to be a certain level of continuity from Senator Lindsey Graham to Senator Darline Graham. I mean, the last name alone is continuous. If Darline Graham ultimately becomes the senator from South Carolina, would she chart her own course? Now, she's telling everybody right now that she will. She's not going to be a big war hawk. She's going to focus on things domestically. And you know what? That's music to the people of South Carolina's ears. I don't know if it'll happen, but it's certainly music to their ears, I'm sure. As Lindsey Graham, is just known for neglecting his base and neglecting his voters and wanting J6ers to be shot in the head. Would she chart her own course? She's obviously telling people right now that she would, but do you believe that? Or do you believe what your gut tells you, and that's that Darline Graham would largely preserve the existing political network built over decades by her brother? Would the lobbyists, consultants, staff, donors, and long-established relationships simply continue uninterrupted under a different name? Why, yes. Why, yes, Virginia. Of course they would. And that's the point of this entire royal retro monarchy shenanigan. It's reasonable to assume that many people who have worked with Senator Graham over the years would naturally prefer continuity rather than uncertainty. That's true in politics generally. Established relationships often survive transitions because they're valuable to people involved. A lot of money at stake here, folks. A lot of money to be spent to save the status quo, to preserve it. Lindsey's deep state staff want to keep their jobs. That's understandable. Anybody would want to keep their job if they could. And all of the lobbyists, all of the special interests, they concur. They work with said staff, and they're now circling the wagons, trying to preserve their own power by propping up Darline Graham. Populist movements have always argued that political institutions tend to protect themselves. Incumbent networks often favor familiar names and established insiders over newcomers with different ideas. Maybe different by today's standards, but old by 18th century standards. Candidates like Mark Lynch, who is an unapologetic Christian businessman who would no doubt actually represent the interests of most average South Carolinians. Mark Lynch represents the opposite model. They don't come with decades of institutional support. He doesn't come with some sort of inheritance that the political machinery is going to christen him with. They have to convince voters one conversation at a time, which is exactly what Mark Lynch is trying to do in South Carolina. That's what our republic on paper, at least, is supposed to look like, but the machine always seems to win, doesn't it? So this isn't about, again, attacking Darline Graham on specifics, because, again, we don't know anything about her. We don't really have any specifics. I mean, maybe they're out there at this point. I did see one tweet, I think. Maybe we do have some specifics, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But I think it's just, this is the reason for this whole segment. It is safe to say that no one should receive an assumption of legitimacy simply because of their last name. And that's exactly what is being forced on the people of South Carolina. America doesn't need political dynasties, but boy, do we have them. Boy, do we have them. It desperately needs outsiders. We, the people, need outsiders who will fight corruption and challenge entrenched power. And we also got to have voters, not political networks, not family connections, not inherited influence, to decide who deserves to represent them in the United States Senate and then specifically in South Carolina. And so you also hope and pray for a fair election with all of this. Tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me what you think, chat. Are you down with this? I know we had several people. We already asked this question yesterday, and I know we had several people that expressed their displeasure with it all. But again, I mean, this is just one of those things where you say, look, I mean, I get it. I know President Trump, for some inexplicable reason, supported Lindsey Graham, and so now he's supporting the sister. But I don't see how you can argue with my point about what she represents. She represents the status quo and represents the far right in South Carolina, not basically a roadblock trying to get unapologetic Christians like Mark Lynch into office. So we've got Rebby Doe, Darline Graham Nordone family. What we know about husband Larry Nordone. Well, what do we know? Let me know. Educate me in the comments. I don't know anything about her husband. Rebby Doe says, I think we should stop calling her Darline Graham and call her by her name, Darline Nordone. You're probably right there. But on X, I mean, her account now just says Darline Graham. I mean, she's dropped it all together. I think because she knows that, her biggest chance is to actually play off on this political dynasty idea, the political dynasty concept. Low 23, where is Rob and Eric at? Okay, Eric is out of town on business. Rob is out of town on business. And I don't exactly know for sure what his schedule is going to be throughout the rest of the week. Rob may be in seat number 2 tomorrow. I know Eric is out for the rest of the week, but bear with me here. I'm sorry to fly solo. I'm sorry to disappoint. I don't like to disappoint. I know the show is so much better when we have Rob and Eric here, but we're gonna, they'll be here soon. They'll be here before you know it. Once again, who knows? We're actually on Thursday though. I'm gonna have military Army veteran Brian Norris, former Arkansas Secretary of State, Republican candidate for Secretary of State, former Brian Norris. He's going to be here on Thursday, and so that's going to be a lot of fun to have him sit in. We're going to go over the headlines and actually kind of, maybe revisit some of what he learned when he ran his race in Arkansas earlier this year. So, Logan 23 says, Paul, I love it when you're solo. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Logan. I do. I appreciate that very much. Let's see here. What else do we have? Any other comments about this? About Darline? Darline. All right. Just let me know what you think. I mean, it's just one of those things where, I know I already polled the audience yesterday, but it's one of those things that's just been eating at me. Here we go. So the inspiration, full disclosure, the inspiration of my little monologue there, I've got to give a shout out to Jake Beckett, Arkansan, who, matter of fact, played for the New England Patriots, was also an Arkansas Razorback, and also it says Rangers lead the way. So he also is a former Ranger. Or are you ever former? I'm sorry, I don't know. I didn't have the courage to serve in the military, so forgive me. I am very ignorant of the terminology. But anyway, he basically said a lot of what I already said about how U.S. Senator Thaddeus Caraway, Arkansas, died in office, and this whole thing happened. And he's comparing President Trump, though, to the Kingfish of Louisiana, Huey Long. He says, Trump and the Kingfish, Huey Long, are cut from the same cloth, and I think it's possible that Trump is supporting Darline Graham for the same reason that Huey Long supported Caraway. What better way to humiliate your enemies in the U.S. Senate than to force a totally unqualified woman on them as their colleague? So that's one take, about this. And because, in that world, though, you would have to assume, maybe we're coming at it from different perspectives, because I'm assuming that Graham, and she even says in this interview with Hannity, she says that, the staff has been great rallying around her. So they all want to keep their jobs and existing political connections. And that's what she represents. It'd be one thing if somehow she didn't represent that establishment entrenched status quo. And, President Trump is throwing his hat in the ring and working again. I just don't see how you can say that Darline Graham doesn't represent the establishment, I guess. That would be my point. Definitely, I mean, it still could be a way to humiliate your enemies, but who are the enemies in this instance? Are they the people on the right in that instance who really didn't like Lindsey Graham, didn't want to reward him with another 6-year term? The same Lindsey Graham that said he was done with Trump and blamed him for January 6th and wanted to shoot January 6th protesters in the head and thought it, and bought into the fake narrative that we all had to beat back and fight back during the Biden administration while J6ers were rotting in Washington, D.C. gulags. I hope not. I hope not. But anyway, it was certainly interesting, interesting historical perspective. And anytime I see something like that, I've got to bring it to the forefront because it's good. And it was also an interesting Arkansas connection. So here's some of the comments. James Clyburn. You guys know James Clyburn, right? U.S. Congressman representing South Carolina's 6th Congressional District. You guys know James Clyburn, right? Congratulations to Senator Darline Graham Nordone on this historic achievement. Her appointment marks a significant milestone for our state. A 2009 graduate of South Carolina State University, Senator Graham Nordone becomes the first woman and the first HBCU graduate to represent South Carolina in the U.S. Senate. This is a testament to the progress our nation continues to make in expanding opportunities for women to serve at the highest levels of public office. I feel certain her historic accomplishment will inspire generations of South Carolinians to believe that no barrier is beyond reach and wish her Godspeed. That's right, little girls. You too could have a brother that has no kids and no wife and dies suddenly, and you get appointed senator for no reason other than it's your brother. Go out there and be somebody. Yeah, you can. Oh, my goodness. At some point, we're going to have a serious discussion about, and look, I know this is going to step on a lot of toes, but I don't care. At some point, you do wonder just how many times we have to go through this trope that really contributed to all of the cultural Marxism, racial Marxism world, which also, it all started with women. It all started with women in the workplace, in the HR departments that, make everything less efficient because men and women, are different. They speak different, they talk different, and now it's like, okay, well, in order to prove we're not sexist, we got to make sure we put women in there. Like, that's why Amy Coney Barrett got in. Like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, and there was no chance in the world that they were going to replace her, Republicans were going to place her with a man. No, because it had to be a woman. We lost a woman, now we got to replace her with a woman. We play these stupid games when, let's be honest, folks, the men out there that are just as qualified for the job would do a better job at it. And so at some point we have to have a serious conversation about the feminization of our culture. Everything is feminized. Everything is geared towards women for the most part in a lot of aspects of our society. And, the right has adopted these presuppositions that they may not come out and say, we're fighting the patriarchy, but by their actions, they really are fighting the patriarchy. And so at some point, maybe it'd be good to have like a conversation about, I don't know, the Bible verse that talks about one of the mechanisms of judgment of a nation is to give them women rulers, to give them female rulers. And I know I'm probably in the minority on that, but that's just kind of the way I feel. And I know there's women in the chat that have that agree with me on this. I know there's plenty of women. I once knew. I still know. I know a woman who is in the political sphere, in the political realm, who says that I'm not going to mention her name, but she says that she would gladly give up her right to vote if it meant all other women couldn't vote, because she just knows that the country would have completely different laws and outcomes and elections and everything else. Now that's what I call sacrificial and submissive is that. But anyway, I know I'm stepping. Let me check the comments real quick while I just said that and see what you guys have to say. Okay, so let's see. That's a little harsh to tell little girls. Sorry about that. Dave 357 Mag. Amy Coney Barrett needs to resign. Saw the interview. She admits she's scared and family under threat. Yeah, we did a show about this last week when Rob and Eric were here. He goes on, I feel for her, but if you can't make proper decisions, resign. Right on. Amy was another bad choice. Women are too easily swayed. This is from Rebby Doe. I'm assuming Rebby, you are female. Amy was another bad choice. Women are too easily swayed, and I'm a 63-year-old woman. There you go. There you go. Okay, well, that's a good point. Topo 1956. How come Chief Justice John Roberts isn't doing a better job? Yeah, I mean, are you saying because John Roberts is a man? Yeah. I get it, right? I mean, look, you can make the argument that all of the feminization of our country is because we had wicked men that made wicked choices, made unrighteous choices that govern from a spirit of selfishness or greed or fear, cowardice, whatever it may be. Like, that's one of the reasons we have what we have. Because, when men govern poorly, people start to say, well, maybe we should try the opposite sex. Okay, so Cherry Cott says, I would totally give up my right to vote if it were guaranteed that the left were no longer a threat and would never be a threat again. I don't know if it would ever guarantee that. There are no guarantees in life. But if you'll look at the liberal white woman problem that this country has, that Rob has talked about many times before, you go look at what the election cycles would have been like over the past, 30, 40 years. It wouldn't have even been close. Democrats would not be able to compete. So, something to think about. Okay, also on and I know I had some comment that said, I don't care about this Lindsey Graham situation. That's fine. We're going to move on to something else here in a minute, so just bear with me here. Palmetto State Watch, so a South Carolina account. I don't really know if this is a liberal. I don't know anything about South Carolina media, but they've got a post. No record. Darline Graham ran a state agency for 7 years. Budgets nearly doubled. Her salary climbed. And her own agency report credits with her promoting a culture of diversity and inclusion. Check out the exclusive. All right, let's check it out right here. So, Palmetto State Watch. This is by Janice SPW. And so it says this. Critics are calling Trump's new Senate pick a political novice. 7 years of South Carolina agency records tells a different story. Deep dives from local politicos and journalists are skimming the surface of the political landscape without even paying attention to the fact that there is a real record here. Miss Graham's is a career spent growing government and seeking out increasing amounts of federal dollars overseen by a board that meets less and less. It's worth noting that official documents, property records, salary information, etc., list her as Darline Graham, not Nordone. Property ownership is listed as Larry A. Nordone and Darline Graham. On Friday, President Trump urged Darline Graham to enter the August 11th, 2026 special Republican primary for the U.S. Senate, a seat left open when her brother, Lindsey Graham, suddenly died. Trump pledged his complete and total endorsement if she runs. Governor Henry McMaster appointed Graham to serve out the remainder of the term and was sworn in on July 14th. She has been touted as the first woman to represent South Carolina in the Senate. Multiple news outlets, including ABC, reported over the weekend that she had privately considered running for the Senate full term and was confirmed on July 20th that Darline will seek the full term. As soon as McMaster tapped Darline, the criticism was perfunctory, and that she has never held public office. But here we go. This claim that Darline Graham has never held public office is false. For the last 7 years, Mrs. Graham has run a state agency, and the paper trail from that agency paints a very clear picture of how she is likely to govern in the absence of a campaign resume. After analyzing the agency Darline oversees, it is clear that she views her job as a means to expand government. The word skyrocket comes to mind when one looks at her budgets, hiring, the federal dollars she pursues, and even her own pay. This is a far cry from the political outsider card being played by the mass media. Let's start with money appropriated from state funds. When Graham took over the South Carolina Commission for the Blind in 2019, how are you going to criticize that? See, this is what they do. What? You mean you're for the blind not having research? You're for more blind people? Anyway, when she took over, the agency was receiving $3.5 million in state general funds. The recapitulation for the 2026-2027 budget places that amount at $7 million, and $6.9 million it was actually budgeted for 2025-2026. The proposed budget, which is not yet passed, would increase that amount to $7.6 million. That's a 95% increase in 7 short years. Well, okay, I mean, yeah, government grows or whatever, and I'm sure she was advocating for that, but I'm sure, I don't know South Carolina statutes, but I'm sure the legislature has to approve that spending. But the agency's total budget has grown faster still, from $12.6 million in 2018 to $91 million the next year. Most of that total is Department of Defense money from Fort Jackson dining contract that passes through the agency to the blind vendor who operates the military dining halls. So anyway, people are diving into her record. But I was curious about DEI. Here we go. This is it. Diversity and Inclusion, Darline. In the SCCB, Society for the Blind's accountability report, it mentions Darline Graham's appointment and what she had complained in her first year. At the end of the paragraph, it states that the new commissioner implemented changes in human resources, including to develop a culture of diversity and inclusion in the SCCB's diverse staff. You see it there, and to develop a culture of diversity and inclusion. So we have another Republican establishment pick, or continued monarchy, that has actively worked to integrate liberal ideology into one of South Carolina's state agencies. So it'll be interesting to see if, here's the deal. It'll be interesting to see if anyone asks her about this. And I don't expect Sean Hannity will actually ask any kind of question like that. And then the next thing is okay, well, are there going to be debates? Probably not. Are going to be any sort of forum where people, like a statewide televised debate where people could get the most information? I mean, the media should be pushing for it because this is unprecedented, right? This doesn't happen every day that a sitting senator dies after just winning his primary. And now everybody's like, well, what do we do? Well, what's the best for South Carolina right now? More information is better. More information is better, right? So there needs to be some sort of statewide debate between now and August. What is it? What did they say it was? They say it's August. Hang on one second here. August 11th. That's just in a couple of weeks, folks. They're going to be deciding this. So you would think something like that would happen. Sound off in the comments. Let me know what you think. Here's another reaction. Dan Bostic. This is one of the most insane interviews I've ever seen. A woman who has virtually no qualifications, no public stance on any major issue, and is almost entirely unknown, is mourning her brother's death by saying that she is called to take his job. Completely bonkers. I know. It's a level of cringe. It is just a level of cringe that exists. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset here. Let me know what you think. I want to talk when we come back about this new trend that the Wall Street Journal is talking about, Nixon maxing. That's right. They think that kids are discovering Richard Nixon, and well, I hope they do discover Richard Nixon, quite frankly, because he was framed by the CIA. I think it was too close to Kennedy, right? They didn't want to kill another one. It would have been too close. People might have started connecting the dots. So they just did an intel op and basically framed him, and which is exactly what they did to Trump as well. So we'll talk about that. Nixon maxing. Kids are rediscovering Richard Nixon, and I'm totally here for it. This is the Paul Harrell program. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back here in just a moment. Just joking. Just a moment.
For centuries, Light has been used to heal. Awaken the body with Red 5.
MyPillow's second annual mega sale is finally here. Get our patented premium MyPillows that adjust to your exact individual needs to give you the best sleep of your life.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
Now for the lowest price ever. Kings, $19.98. Queens, only $18.98. And Giza Dream bed sheets, the best sheets in history, for as low as $29.98. Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, towels that actually dry you. What a concept. Now only $39.98. And our made in the USA mattresses and mattress toppers as low as $99.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But that's not all. Order right now and we'll ship your order absolutely free.
This is our family dog, Bubba. He is a Shorty Jack Russell, and he brings a lot of love and laughter into our home. We just want to thank Pet Club for making healthy food and treats for our animals. Bubba has been on Pet Club food for a little over a year now. He really likes the Sequoia dry food, and then I put a scoop of the Sequoia wet dog food in there with some hot water and stir it up, and he absolutely loves it. And he likes the mush puppies, but his ultimate favorite is the antlers. Those keep him busy for a really long time, and he really likes them. It makes us feel really good that the food and treats that we give him have healthy ingredients in them, because we want him to be around for a really long time. Our previous dog was a lab, and his name was Titus, and we fed him in bulk, and we would just get his food from the big box grocery stores. And unfortunately, that food wasn't very healthy for him, and he ended up getting cancer and passing away. So we didn't want to make that mistake with Bubba, so we were really fortunate to find Pet Club and find some really healthy food for him to eat. So we would just like to thank Pet Club, and we just really appreciate the healthy food that they make, so we can keep this guy around as long as we can.
The other things that we're seeing, more and more use for is even vascular issues. So one of the mechanisms that red light, near-infrared light, or Red 5 works is stimulation of the mitochondria and stimulation of nitric oxide production. So when nitric oxide is released in cells, it vasodilates cells. It reduces inflammation. It moves blood. It brings blood flow to areas. So folks that have issues with ulcers or burns or wounds, it can help stimulate increased blood supply, and you need blood to heal. So that can open up different avenues for peripheral artery disease, for neuropathic pain syndromes. And so that's one of the other areas for nerve injury or nerve pain that we can leverage this type of medicine.
The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to remind everybody that the Paul Harrell Program is powered by the Healing Veterans Project, lighting the path to wellness. And if you want to help a veteran get, we're talking about, sorry about this, I'm going to get this audio music out of here. Sorry, that's too loud. We're talking about red light panels, photobiomodulation, that actually fixes the problems and the ailments and the injuries of our veterans in ways that pharmaceutical drugs like Vicodin or Percocet actually don't. And it's incredible that we have a list, ladies and gentlemen, Healing Veterans Project, a nonprofit that I am privileged to be on the board of, the Healing Veterans Project. They have a list of veterans that have been prescribed these red light panels by physicians, by doctors. The VA says no, and these veterans cannot afford it. That is what the whole purpose of this nonprofit is, to deliver these red light panels to them. And so this is only a week old. It's been a long time coming, but they can take donations. And so all you got to do is go to healingveteransproject.us. That's healingveteransproject.us. And you can get on board and do a monthly contribution, or you can just do a one-time contribution, but it's obviously tax deductible. And I am told that if you sign up for a monthly contribution, that you will be receiving swag. You will be receiving merch eventually, hat or T-shirt or what have you. So you definitely want to make sure that you go to healingveteransproject.us and check it out today. All right. So Nixon maxing. Have you heard about this? The Wall Street Journal has noticed a trend that kids are now Nixon maxing. Here's the headline from the Wall Street Journal. Young conservatives have an unlikely new icon, Richard Nixon. Nixon maxing swag and TikTok videos have helped trigger a rethinking of the former president's legacy among some conservatives. Yeah, this all started when we all realized that Roger Stone, first of all, well, let me finish my thought. It's all started when we all realized that Roger Stone had a fixation with Richard Nixon because he has a Richard Nixon tattooed in the middle of his back, which I always thought was very, very odd. After President Trump won the first time, there was a Netflix documentary that heavily featured Roger Stone and Alex Jones called Get Me Roger Stone. And I remember thinking to myself, when that documentary hit Netflix, I watched it, couldn't believe it. I thought it was such an interesting documentary, but I said, they're going to go after Roger Stone and they're going to go after Alex Jones, and they did both. I knew it. I was like, this is Netflix. This is the big media basically telling these are the guys. Go after these guys. They're the reason we have to deal with President Trump and his supporters and that sort of thing. But if you look into Richard Nixon, I mean, it's very obvious to me now. If you look into the plumbers and you look into the DNC and everything that Watergate was, and Bob Woodward, even Bill Murray, actor, comedian Bill Murray, from Ghostbusters, from Caddyshack, and there he was, the Dalai Lama. Sorry, I can make myself laugh. I crack myself up. Anyway, even Bill Murray said that Bob Woodward, who is essentially now, in hindsight, Bob Woodward is just a CIA mouthpiece, and was back then, is what people are coming to the conclusion of. But Bill Murray went on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said, Bob Woodward apparently wrote a book about his friend John Belushi, the late, great John Belushi. And Bill Murray says that the book was just not true, that they basically were talking to second and third hand. They were talking to people that didn't know John Belushi, and Bill Murray's like, but I knew him really well. And he said, so I read this book by Bob Woodward, and I immediately came to the conclusion that they framed Nixon. He was like, his journalism was so bad that I assumed that Richard Nixon was framed. That's what he said on the Joe Rogan Experience or whatever. So I think kids are Nixon maxing, really, because they're figuring out what actually happened to Nixon. Here's a guy who won 49 states, was at least billed as a self-made man, and he was going to govern as a populist. There's a rumor, there's reports out there that he thought the CIA had actually killed Kennedy or had a role in killing Kennedy. And so what did they do to Nixon? I mean, they basically the intelligence agencies took Kennedy out. The intelligence agencies couldn't do Nixon because it was just too close. People would have figured it out. So this time they decided to make him the only president to resign. And so he says, I'm out. And that's all she wrote about that. So, but he's coming back in a big way. People are revisiting this conspiracy, and there's plenty of reporting out there now that suggests that this was an intelligence operation to set President Nixon up to get him out. Definitely a deep state uniparty intel oligarchy back then, for sure. And they rallied around the troops They rallied around their entrenched power interests to take Nixon out. Christopher Rufo says about this Wall Street Journal piece, he says, they nail it. The right's rediscovery of Richard Nixon is not about particular policies, some good, some bad, but about the aesthetic, the attitude, and the narrative of the self-made man who won 49 states on behalf of the silent majority and was taken down in a deep state coup. Yes, let history reflect this. Just like many people believed that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman for forever, and now most people believe that was totally made up, people are now revisiting Richard Nixon and figuring out the truth, or let's say a narrative that is much closer to the truth than what we were actually told. And let's hope that we continue to do this with all of the things, all of the narratives that we're being fed that don't quite make sense, right? And of course, I'm talking about the Butler shooting, and I'm even talking about the official Charlie Kirk narrative. I'm still waiting to see exactly how the court case, everything that I haven't really talked about it because I'm just looking at the evidentiary hearings and that sort of thing. I still do have a lot of questions though about whether or not Tyler Robinson acted alone. I have a ton of questions about that because it just doesn't sit well with me at all. But then there's the Butler thing, and the Butler thing is even more interesting. How that's just like, well, nothing to see here, folks. No big deal. Yeah, we cremated the body. What happened to the van? Multiple cell phones. Was there an FBI handler involved? A totally scraped and whitewashed social media. I mean, the guy was in a BlackRock commercial. I mean, do I really have to go on? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So if something doesn't make sense, we live in a great time where, you know what, you can just tell people that it doesn't make sense. And most people are like, yeah, I think we're being lied to all the time about everything. And most of the time, that instinct is correct. Because you are. Whether it was Kennedy, whether it was Nixon, whether it was, a modern example would be when President Trump said there was very fine people on both sides. And, of course, a lot of people had a wake-up moment there when they realized the media was lying to you. You could go back. I mean, all kinds of stuff. George Zimmerman, a white Hispanic. The Associated Press made up the term white Hispanic after Trayvon Martin was killed. It's insane. Brandon Gill, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon Gill is on the floor, he's in a committee room interviewing the head of the Smithsonian. Now, when it comes to the Smithsonian, I'm actually probably, more conspiratorial than most. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think of the Smithsonian? Much like I've of the opinion that the FBI only exists to create crimes and then cover them up, generally speaking, the Smithsonian exists to cover up anything that would give validity to the biblical narrative of creation, specifically surrounding the events of Genesis chapter 6. This is my opinion, but I know there are people that disagree with me on that. There are many accounts of archaeological finds, discovering of giant skeletons throughout America back in the 1800s, early 1900s, where the Smithsonian shows up and basically steals everything to cover it up. So, so we have a few people in the comments. Nere89 says, I think the Smithsonian hides stuff all the time. Yeah, exactly. You can catch them, though. Sometimes you can catch them in obvious contradictions. Because the Smithsonian they're all these museums. They've got the Chicago Museum, whatever the actual name is of the museum up there in Chicago. But you can catch them in weird contradictions. Like at one time, the museum in Chicago was displaying a giant axe head. Not a axe head of giants. That's what it was. But just a giant axe head. I mean, this thing is humongous. There's literally no way that there would ever be a human being that would wield such a weapon, right? And so, but yet it was on display, and it was a Native American axe head, just an axe. And they, just the head of the axe. And in the plaque beneath it, it says, ceremonial Native American axe head. And you're like, in what world does a bunch of nomads, with limited resources and technology, especially when it comes to like something like a stone that big, are going to spend the time and resources to create a ceremonial axe head? They would never do that. But they have to call it ceremonial, because if they don't call it ceremonial, people would say, what was the practical use of this? Oh yeah, in order for the person that would be able to wield an axe head like this would have to be a minimum of 12 feet tall, and have femur bones as tall as I am, right? And so they don't. So you can catch them. You just have to think critically. You can catch these museum people a lot of times. Yeah, Dave 357 says, you stole my comment, was already typing LOL, that kills me. They basically are solely responsible for all of that. Oh, well, I'm in on a different conversation. So here's Brandon Gill talking to the head of the Smithsonian. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but this is only 38 seconds long, but it does not disappoint.
Excuse me, sir?
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture. Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
No, sir.
You're not. Can you help me square why your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
I'm not exactly familiar with that passage of the Mass Action Toolkit, which is not
I can show you the
one that we
passage. It's right
developed.
here.
If there's anybody out there that's wondering why there has, over the last, let's say, I would just say 10 years, over the last 10 years, if there's anybody out there wondering why there are all of a sudden people on the right that talk about white culture as an actual distinct thing and are comfortable doing it. Because let's be honest. The paradigm for forever was, we could reference black culture, you could reference Hispanic culture, you could reference gay culture. But if you ever claimed that you had an own culture that was distinctive to white people, people on the left and the right would lose their minds, because they immediately start thinking, oh no, that sounds like you're ready to commit violence. It sounds like, that'll send the wrong message. But everybody else can say that they have their own culture, but white people aren't allowed to, because I don't know. I don't know why, but it's clearly discriminatory, right? And it's also, it's not even really like a victimhood status. It's just like you're denying, like, we can say black culture and Hispanic culture and all this other stuff. We can't say white culture. So we're having to lie. You're just asking us to lie and deny the reality that we all see every single day. I know what kind of culture I'd walk into if I go over to Memphis and start strolling down Lamar Avenue. Pretty sure I know what kind of culture to expect there, right? Likewise, you know what kind of culture what kind of culture you're walking into when you go into the foothills of the Ozark Mountains, and you know what kind of people are going to be there, and it's going to be white people, and it's going to be a white culture. And but if you really want to know why people started, obviously the anti-white bias, Jeremy Carl has a great book about this, The Unprotected Class, all that's fantastic. But if you really want to know, in my opinion, why people started not being ashamed or afraid to say white culture, it's because of the left identifying virtuous characteristics as white culture. And so this Smithsonian director, Hardig, doesn't even know what leftist social justice warrior, purple-haired lesbian has written down in some sort of policy, that who's in a lifer in some sort of bureaucratic eternity or whatever. Like, she doesn't know this person wrote down in there that politeness. I mean, maybe she does, but she looks like she has no idea what's going on. That there's people that work for her organization that think being polite, which is another way of saying being respectful of other person, of like being polite. You can certainly lump in with Jesus's commandment of love your neighbor as yourself, the second of the greatest commandments. Being polite would certainly be that. Oh, by the way, that's why also in American white culture, you also, and the left does this for us, they lump Christianity in that as well, which again proves my point as to why, okay, well, they're describing us this way, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong about it. It's not just politeness. I mean, you can go back and you can find oh man, I cannot remember the exact, but there's a lot of videos. But there was one video. Do you not remember that one video where it was somebody teaching? It was somebody teaching some sort of like class or seminar, and she was a very large, round black woman, I believe. And I don't know, it was for some leftist organization, but they got it on camera. It might have been James O'Keefe that got it. I don't know who got it, but that they said that showing up to work on time was part of white culture, and it was a part of systemic race. So if back then, they were really out in the open, like if it's a part of white culture, if we identify it as a part of white culture, then we can also identify it as systemic racism, right? So the system, so expecting somebody to be to work on time, well, that's a white thing. Expecting somebody to be polite, well, that's a white thing. So we can not show up to work on time and be rude, and I guess just be barbarians. And so if you've ever wondered, I'm so glad Brandon Gill did this, because it's so important that we take stock about why the narrative and why the Overton window has shifted. And in large part, it has shifted because there's people on the right that bravely spoke up about this long before somebody like I did. But it also is because of the left. And the left really telling us what their intentions are when it comes to white people. They've told us how much they hate us and they hate our culture, and then so it's not hard to look 3 steps ahead and see the boxcars, right? And then they're going to lump Christianity in with that. Obviously, it's not exclusive. Christianity is not exclusive to white culture, but it certainly is a part. And in many cases, we have a lot of people that there are a lot of white Americans that are just as lost as anybody else, just as lost as maybe not just as lost as the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, but certainly lost. If you're lost, you're lost, right? Apart from Christ, all are lost. So, but we're living off the derivative fumes, if you will, of our forefathers, and we need to wake up and realize it. And, I'll never forget it. I remember as an avid talk radio listener, this would have been before I had my show, or maybe during my show. I'm gonna find this out. To prove my point, I'm going to discover this for you because I want to find out. When everybody lost their minds. 1 second. Bear with me. Let's see what Google AI says. So I did not have my show. I was months away from starting my radio show in 2009. July 28th of 2009. Glenn Beck made the controversial comment on July 28, 2009 during an appearance on Fox and Friends. Okay, I thought it was during Katie Couric. While discussing President Barack Obama's criticism of the police regarding the arrest of Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates Jr., Beck stated that Obama had exposed himself as a guy with a deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture, and added he believed that the president was racist. Okay, so he said it on Fox and Friends, but I know he did a CBS News interview and was asked about that question. I mean, just look at this. Here's the NBC News coverage of this statement by Glenn Beck back in 2009. Fox News channel commentator Glenn Beck said he believes President Barack Obama is a racist. His remarks came during discussion of Obama's reaction to the arrest of Harvard University. And Obama spokesman William Burton said the White House had no comment. This guy, I believe, is racist. I'm not saying he doesn't like white people. He has a problem. This guy is, I believe, a racist. But it was the I'm telling you, it was the Katie Couric interview. That's what it was. It was the Katie Couric interview where he got asked about white culture. What is white culture? Let me see this one right here. Hang on. Okay. Later in September 2009, Katie Couric interviewed Beck and asked him to clarify the comment by asking, "What did you mean white culture?" And Beck struggled to answer, ultimately responding, "What is the white culture? I don't know how to answer that." Let's just watch this right here. Do we have it? Let's see if this actually is going to let us watch it. Looks like the video doesn't even exist anymore.
You said President Obama has a, quote, deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture. And later you said, this guy is, I believe, a racist. I know you spent a show talking about that and defending your position, but can you explain to people right now in a shorter form why you think President Obama is a racist?
Let's see. Give you a soundbite on a soundbite that caused trouble.
This is unedited. No, do you still believe that he is a racist?
I believe that what is important for any president, for any populace to look into.
Keep in mind that when he said this, people lost their minds. Okay, now he had just gotten he had a CNN show, then he had a Fox News show, and so he was the main critic of Obama, talking about George Soros and everything else, and the Tides Foundation. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember all this. But when he said white culture, that's when they lost their minds, because you're not allowed to say that white people have a culture, but we now can identify it because the left identifies what it is. They showing up to work on time and being polite, according to Brandon Gill. Anyway, I want to finish this clip.
Is to be able to look in and say, as a populace, who's leading us? How does he make decisions? What does he base it on? If you had George Bush sitting here in the same situation, remember, put it in context of the time this happened. This is Barack Obama saying, I don't have any of the details of my friend, who happens to be African American, busted by a white cop. I don't have any of the details, but the cops were stupid. Well, wait. So what prism are you, if you don't have the details, what is it that colored your glasses to say the cops were wrong? What was it?
A history of racial profiling in this country?
Okay, a history of racial profiling. So then that's good. Then that's the prism you're looking through. Isn't that important to know? Isn't that important to know that the president comes at it with the cops are wrong because of my history tells me.
A statement he refuted later. And also, I mean, is that the same as saying he's a racist? I mean, that's a pretty... yes, everyone's colored by their own experiences.
Sure.
Everybody sees things from their own particular prism. But saying that this happens in this country, is that really the same as being a racist, Glenn?
I think what we have to do, Katie, is, first of all...
Are you sorry you said that at all?
I'm sorry the way it was phrased, because I think everybody has to... living in a soundbite world, really a nasty place to live. And it is a serious question that I think needs serious discussion. That's why the next day I talked about it for 30 minutes and laid out the case on why I think it's a serious question and something to seriously look at. Again, if George Bush would have sat, and let me ask you this question, if he would have sat in a pew for 20 years where he had a preacher saying, black people are wrong and bad. Black people are poisoning white people. Would you not question if he immediately made a snap judgment on something and said the black cop was wrong?
So you're bringing it back to Reverend Wright.
That's one example.
Let me ask, can I
I've got 30 minutes, and we could go longer on that than we did it.
That's
you
not
go to
going to even
glennbeck.com
have the portion I'm looking
look
for.
at all of them.
It doesn't even have the portion I was looking for. He gets asked about what is white culture. I have to find it now, folks. Because we couldn't even define it. Yep. You can read more about the intent. Maybe Mediaite. Let's see this Mediaite story. But when he was asked to explain white culture, in which was part of his comments about President Trump, he began to avoid the question. In subsequent minutes, Beck explained how his answer, no matter what it was, will be taken out of context. And he was, no, absolutely. I mean, he's right about that. Of course it would be taken out of context. I'm sorry to go through this long, drawn-out thing. That was in 2009. It's now 2026, and now it is perfectly acceptable now to say that white culture does exist, and the left defines it as being polite and showing up to work on time. The left defines it as being polite and showing up to work on time.
Excuse me, sir?
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture. Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
No, sir.
You're not. Can you help me square why your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
I'm not exactly familiar with that passage of the mass action toolkit, which is
I can show you the
one that we
passage. It's right
developed.
here.
Excuse me, sir?
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture. Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
No, sir.
You're not. Can you help me square why your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
I'm not exactly familiar with that passage.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And now they've ramped it up. Okay, notice the phrasing. Because white culture or systemic racism, years ago, again, they would say showing up to work on time. Left has said this, showing up to work on time is a part of white supremacy, or they would say white culture, or they would say not white supremacy, they would say systemic racism or whatever. But now it's not just white culture, it's white supremacy, which means that they think that white culture is white supremacy by default. That means that if you're white, then you're just naturally a supremacist, which is why these other supremacist races, I mean, that's where they're coming at it from. It's literally setting things up for, I mean, you know what their intentions are, right? You know what their intentions are. You don't get a fair trial because of the color of your skin. This is literally what is coming down the pike. If the left gets back in power and we have to live under their rule, it's pretty crazy. Let me see what the comments say before we take another quick break here. Let's see. Carl Benji, Obama should have never been allowed to be president. Yep. And then the whole, that's the whole thing. I mean, the first real incursion of President Trump or of Trump into politics was the whole birth certificate thing. We remember this. This must be on the Smithsonian history. We've been taught pales into comparison to the history that they've hidden from us. AV 1965. Yep, you're right about that. So, I don't know. I just find it interesting as somebody who was in the game or about to be in terms of covering the news on a daily basis and kind of being a news hound. I just find it so interesting to have that institutional memory of people losing their minds when somebody essentially, they made it about calling Obama racist, but they also, I'm telling you, it was him saying a deep hatred of white culture. What is white culture to you? A term that nobody wants to define, but now the left has defined it. Or maybe there's a lot of people that want to define it, but now it's really nice when the left defines it for you, isn't it? Being polite. Oh man, we just got to get more people understanding exactly what's going on. All right, I'm going to take another break. Don't go anywhere. This is the Paul Harrell program. We really appreciate you being with us. We got a great rest of the show for you. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Why is Red Vive different? What sets it apart? What sets us apart from the standard red light panels? This is a medical grade device, and what that means is the red light bulbs and the near infrared bulbs have very specific wavelengths. If you think about the wavelength as the medicine, the 635, the 670, the 810, the 850, those were specifically chosen because those are the most powerful effectors of the cells. So those specific wavelengths, when they get into our body, when they affect our tissue, they spike energy production, they help with nerve pain control, they increase stem cell counts. There's very specific mechanisms that those specific wavelengths work at, and that's the medicine. So if you think of, say, medicine as an Advil or a specific steroid or a blood pressure medication, the wavelength is the medication. The other part of that, whenever you take a medication, is dose. Right? So you have the medication. So if you take 1 milligram of Advil, and the average dose of an Advil is 200 milligrams to 800 milligrams, it's not going to work. That doesn't mean the medicine's bad. It just means you didn't take enough. Right? And so even if you have the right wavelengths, first you have to have the right medicine, and then you have to have the right dose. And to have the right dose, in light therapy, you have to have enough energy. So you have to have a powerful bulb. The LED bulbs, or light emitting diodes, have a specific wavelength, and that wavelength is the medicine. And the wavelengths that have been studied and published on that are the most powerful in affecting healing and the changes that we want to see with our bodies and our health are the 635 wavelength, the 670, 810 nanometer wavelength, and 850 nanometer wavelength. Those are all going to affect the mitochondria, the cytochrome C oxidase, and affect those powerful long-term changes and affect that downstream pathways. And that's what you get with Red Vive devices. The highest efficacy, the best wavelengths, concentrated to help your health.
MyPillow's second annual mega sale is finally here. Get our patented premium MyPillows that adjust to your exact individual needs to give you the best sleep of your life.
When I got my pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
Now for the lowest price ever. Kings, $19.98, Queens, only $18.98. And Giza Dream bed sheets, the best sheets in history, for as low as $29.98. Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, towels that actually dry you, what a concept, now only $39.98. And our made in the USA mattresses and mattress toppers as low as $99.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But that's not all. Order right now and we'll ship your order absolutely free.
My name is John, and this is my beautiful wife, Lori, and this is our Star Wars Ewok. His name is Scout, and we have Scout for about 11 years now, and we started noticing about 3 years ago he started slowing down. He was unable to jump on the bed. He was kind of a little bit grumpier, and when my daughters, Macy and Mariah, would take him on walks, he would walk for about 30 yards, and then he'd lay down, and they'd carry him the rest of the way. So I heard about Pet Club 24/7 and about the products from a gentleman that I really trust and share a friendship with. And he mentioned to me that they have products that are going to help him with his arthritis, help him build his immune system. And I said, okay, no problem. Let's try him out. And I kid you guys not, within about 2 to 3 days, we started noticing a little difference. And then we took Scout on a walk probably about a week after we started using the products, the mush puppies, and he would walk the entire way. He would walk at least a mile, and it's just been completely amazing. He's a new dog. He's 11 years old, which is around 80 years in dog years, and he's just happy. He's more energetic. He's not the grumpy old man he used to be, and we're just so thankful. And it was perfect timing because we lost our boxer Yankee about 1.5 years ago, and it was really hard on us. So I'm so thankful for Pet Club 24/7 for the products that they offer. Imagine if you could have your best friend around one more day or one more week or even one more year. I'm so blessed and thankful that we were able to find this company and find these products for Scout. So thank you guys. Give it a shot. We appreciate you. God bless everyone.
For centuries, light has been used to heal. Awaken the body with Red Vibe.
The Paul Harrell Program.
Yeah, so I'm just...
For centuries, light has been used.
Sorry about that, folks. So I'm just seeing this come across my desk here, and it was like 4 hours ago, but Eric Daugherty is saying that in a stunning admission, New Jersey Governor Mike Sherrill says the state registered thousands of non-citizens to vote because of a glitch. And hundreds of non-citizens are confirmed to have voted that they're aware of. 6,600 non-citizens registered. Save America Act now. I think, though, we've got to brace ourselves for the fact that this is not going to happen. I don't believe that the Save America Act is going to happen. I don't believe that we're seeing any of the type of hardball that needs to be played with somebody like John Thune from the administration. He needs to be, President Trump needs to be attacking John Thune every single day. He needs to be attacking all of the senators every single day with the same type of ferocity that you saw him attack Thomas Massie with, in my opinion. And I think we've got, I mean, if you wanted to get passed. Now, we've talked about on this show that even if it does pass, there's serious questions about implementation. Because at this point, you're going to have a court challenge regardless. If President Trump does the executive order route with the evidence that he's got from Tulsi Gabbard, and now, by extension, Bill Pulte, it's going to be challenged in court. And if they were to somehow pass the SAVE Act via reconciliation, by essentially what I'm told is that in order to pass it for reconciliation, you're going to end up bribing all of these senators to vote for it. Because you're going to put a bunch of pork in there that they want in order to get them to vote for it. And even if it does pass, after that, after we give away the farm, the law will still be challenged in court. And so I don't even see how you implement it at this point. I think it is it's one of those things where what do you do? Now, I mean, I'm not a strategist. I'm just somebody that reads the news. So, I mean, I could be totally wrong here. You guys know that, and I'd love to admit that I'm wrong, but I really don't know what happens from here when it comes to the midterms. And I know there's different polls out there that show you different things. But we're now, we're getting more news about what's going on in Iran and another foreign conflict and the escalation that just doesn't seem like it's ever going to end. It seems like it's getting worse and worse, and you've got people whispering, out there about boots on the ground, and that's not going to be popular with people back here at home when you're looming midterms. When the midterms are looming, it's just not. So, at least that's my opinion, and you feel free to disagree with it. But in the meantime, here domestically, we have huge problems that we're facing. Huge problems that we need to that need to be taken care of here. And one of those is John Thune, in my opinion. We also have this. So the director for the Center of Baptist Leadership, William Wolf, has gotten into a spat with Representative Don Bacon. And it goes something like this. So let me go all the way up here. So House of Representatives is, people are putting out there that they're voting for the Farm Bill, which is basically going to support amnesty. Steve Ferguson writes, a new agricultural bill just dropped in the House of Representatives, and it features granting amnesty to illegal aliens present in the United States as of May 31st, 2026, who meet minimal agricultural work history requirements. Representative Don Bacon says this is what most of our farmers are requesting. Perhaps you're on the wrong side of this issue or with the Democrats. Support our farmers. Look, I support farmers. I certainly want them to be able to feed the country. I certainly do that, but no, this was decided. This issue has been decided over the course of 3 elections, and I'm sorry if there are farmers out there who are depending on the labor of illegal immigrants. That's something that we as a country are just going to have to figure out how to get over. And if you were to tell people, people talking about, well, you need to pay higher gas prices, just be okay with paying higher gas prices while we're going to war, in another country in the Middle East again. Okay, that's a debate to be had, I suppose. But if you were to actually say, no, we're gonna have a little pain here to fix our country here at home and solve this sellout that's happened, this civilizational suicide that's happened, you'd have a lot more people that would say, you know what, yes, I'll pay higher prices or whatever so that we can get the illegal immigrants out of our country. You would have a lot more people being willing to do that. It just comes down to sorry, I didn't mean to get so worked up there. But it's frustrating. At a minimum, this has been decided over 3 election cycles, 3 presidential cycles. 2020, 2016, 2020, 2024. And now we get, this is what the farmers want. I'm sorry. What do the American people want? What have we voted for? Absent the lobby, what are the vast majority of American people want? And you know what? Right now, if we had a direct democracy, which I am not in support of, but on our biggest issues, if the majority of the country just got to go vote, all of the illegal immigrants would be gone if we got to push a button. On the biggest issues, transing kids and calling it health care would be illegal, would be considered child abuse. A majority of the country would vote with us on that. And yet Congress can't do anything about it. Refuses to do anything about it. So William Wolf, who's a great follow, started an organization to try to save his denomination, his Southern Baptist Convention. He kind of makes fun of Don Bacon, says, the farmers made me do amnesty. Well, Mr. Bacon, if our farmers said the moon was made of barbecue spare ribs, would you eat it? And Don Bacon says, you embarrassed the Baptist church too. But that's after he said, this is, let's see here. I thought we had another retort, but I guess I'm missing it. It says, you embarrassed the office that you hold. So I saw this yesterday. I couldn't really believe that this is the proposed bill. Surely this is not going to happen. Surely there's going to be some common sense. People realize this is not the way forward. But it just kind of shows you that campaigns are one thing, but actually implementing the policies that are wildly popular is a whole other thing. It's a very, very difficult thing to get secured for the people. In other news, the FBI has confirmed that the anti-ICE terrorist Andrew Arabica poured gasoline at the employee entrance to the Federal Plaza in New York City and ignited it with a lighter and incendiary device. I'm told that they actually tried to say this was fireworks. He had 2 axes, a hammer, a machete, 3 knives, a pellet gun, and a partridge in a pear tree. This is a little soundbite here from the press conference.
Today, just before 9 a.m., a man by the name of Andrew Arabica, A-R-R-A-B-A-C-A, arrived at 26 Federal Plaza, just behind us on Worth Street, at the employee entrance to the building, where he ignited gasoline. He poured gasoline onto the ground and ignited it with a lighter and an incendiary device. That device was a firework, a large firework in a canister. That proceeded to catch on fire, pretty big flame as you've seen on the internet.
So it was fireworks.
He then pulled out an airsoft rifle and fired 5 to 7 pellets, if you will, in the direction of 26 Federal Plaza. At that time, Federal Protective Services, 2 officers, a gray suit, a contractor with Allied that is employed to guard this building, and those 3 people and the 2 officers standing behind me in the blue shirts are the officers that intervened and took Mr. Erbach into custody. Well, he had him on the ground. An FBI agent jumped in and they put handcuffs on him and took him in the building. He is currently in custody and he has been interviewed. Erbach is a former United States Army soldier. He was enlisted for approximately 4 years, serving from 2001 to 2005. He was a repairman or mechanic on Patriot missile systems. He is 43 years old. There were injuries in this. 3 people were injured, minor injuries, 1 civilian and 2 government employees. Right now, our evidence response team is out working with NYPD and our New York Joint Terrorism Task Force to collect evidence, to conduct interviews. We have located a vehicle of Mr. Erbach's.
Yeah, okay. So the organized, and I don't know, people, lone wolf incident, but I mean, come on, this is just confirming what we know. The organized violence of the left is real. Seems like I had a related story here. Hang on one second. But I'm not finding it. Yeah, here's the related story. This kind of goes back with what we covered at the beginning of the segment with the governor of New Jersey. Stephen Miller has revealed that estimates show that about a third of the nation's CDL drivers, commercial driver's licenses, were issued to illegal aliens. 1/3. This is obviously coming from states, not just California and New York, but it's also coming from Florida. It's coming from places it's coming from even Texas. You can see the American Truckers Association or the American Truckers. I can't remember the exact name of that organization we covered a few weeks ago. They're definitely saying that this has got to stop because this is a form of terrorism. This is a form of terrorism, and wars throughout human history have been fought over less. But if you have states, or companies rather, in states, California is a big offender though, that are licensing illegals. Many of them can't even read road signs. They're making all Americans less safe. They're driving down the road, the wrong side of the road. They're having these accidents. And so if we know this, and this is what R.N. McIntyre says, then we have to arrest and deport them. Okay, if that's true, like, get their names, get their addresses. Presumably you can get that, and go and arrest these people. And deport them. Immediately deport them. Something to think about. Okay, so the Odyssey is in the news. We covered it. I still have not seen it. I am still awaiting Rob Spencer to give me his review of it. But there's... So from what I've heard, the Odyssey is not the worst movie ever made. But the fundamentals of it are, first of all, it's not the Odyssey, okay, because they're deconstructing Western archetypes, heroic Western archetypes that are kind of the bedrock of our civilization. And of course, that's what they're going to do. I talked yesterday about how, from what I've heard, the female characters in the Odyssey, the ones that are villainous, like Calypso or these other, they try to make them the victim. They want to ascribe evil motives to them, even though in the poem, in the story, that's exactly what they are. They've also taken the supernatural out of it. Anyway, Matt Walsh has his review. And his review says this, quote, "Just saw the Odyssey. Despite what you may have heard, literally all of the criticisms by conservatives were entirely correct. The movie is just as woke as you fear, if not more so. The DEI casting is atrocious, completely takes you out of the story. Am I to hear right that the opening scene of this Greek epic is the black rapper Travis Scott is the first person you see on the screen? Travis Scott, who didn't somebody die at one of his concerts while he was basically chanting like Luciferian lyrics over the crowd, cursing the crowd as somebody was trampled to death? I'm pretty sure that was Travis Scott. He's the first face you see in this movie. He says completely takes you out of the story right from the beginning. But even worse than that is Nolan's decision to turn Odysseus into an anachristic, whiny, solemn shell of a man plagued by trauma and guilt. He says it's impossible to overlook these flaws because the film itself is not terribly entertaining or well constructed. For the most part, it is disjointed, dull, self-serious, disenchanted, somehow feeling both verbose and overly rushed at the same time. The dialogue is some of the worst I've ever heard in a critically acclaimed film. On the nose and clunky are descriptions that can't even begin to describe the script. And at no point in the story does Nolan ever transport the audience to the ancient world. By the way, I've also heard the critique that ancient Greece was not ancient at the time of the Odyssey. Obviously, I know it's a fictional story, although I've got my conspiracies about that as well. But, I mean, all of these myths and stuff were considered world history up until about 1,000 years ago, just FYI. And Troy, when I was growing up, Troy was a myth, and then we found the city. So just take that with a grain of salt. But I did hear that a lot of the ruins, I mean, a lot of the Greek sets were in ruins. And it's like, they wouldn't have been in ruins. Again, I haven't seen the movie yet. And I don't want to see it after this because I feel like even going, especially paying money to see it at this point, I feel like is supporting something that is just so subversive and against the civilization that I want to preserve, not deconstruct. He says, at no point does Nolan ever transport the audience to the ancient world. You never feel like you're 3,000 years in the past. You feel like you're watching modern Americans put on a pageant because you are. Nobody would be calling this thing a masterpiece if it was made by a director not named Christopher Nolan. Yeah, he's the big ticket item, right? He's like the last Hollywood guy that can put bodies in the seats. That's kind of who Christopher Nolan is. R.N. McIntyre, I don't know all the issues with Nolan's Odyssey because I saw a Black Helen of Troy and a Tiny Troon playing a war hero, and I didn't give him my money because the movie was obviously made to destroy my civilization. Is this so hard? Matt Walsh, again, kind of in a follow-up, says, in Apocalypto, do you guys remember Mel Gibson's Apocalypto? It's a fantastic piece. He says, in Apocalypto, Mel Gibson transports you into the mind of a Mayan 500 years ago. In The Northman, Robert Eggers transports you into the mind of a Viking 1,000 years ago. By the way, I hated The Northman. I know so many people loved that. I felt so gross and dirty after watching that movie. And so if that's what being a Viking was 1,000 years ago, and maybe it was, I mean, I don't deny that it didn't transport you into... I mean, I definitely did feel like I was in a very, desolate place that was not modern in any sense, like not at all. So, but I was not a fan of The Northman. I felt so gross after watching that movie. But anyway, he says, The Northman, Robert Eggers transports you into the mind of a Viking 1,000 years ago. In The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan transports you into the mind of a liberal woman in 2017. Now, granted, all this is meant to entertain you, and so it's also they're trying to entertain you as well. But it's the Hollywood loves to do this, is make semi-entertaining movies and then slip in the subversiveness so you won't notice. Here's Steve Dace. Steve Dace, he has a review, and it's pretty good.
Hey, Steve Dace here, and I just got out of the Odyssey, and let me not bury the lead. Christopher Nolan ought to be ashamed of himself. First of all, I have no idea why anyone thinks this is a great film. I mean, I truly don't. It's laborious. I yawned several times.
I've heard that
I dozed off once.
From Tyrone
There's a couple of
Magnus.
very nice set pieces. It needed an editor badly, or at least a different one than it had. And then the sound mixing, again, it's just like with Tenet. I picked up like every third or fourth word. And again, I saw this in my state's largest and nicest IMAX theater. So the way it was intended to be seen. And I struggled to hear too much of the dialogue of the film. And then there's the parts that I did hear. And as mediocre as the film itself is, it's very clear that this story was constructed specifically to subvert Western civilization. Anyone who is telling you that Ellen Page's character is a minor footnote and just kind of shows up and is gone, entirely untrue. She's in the very opening of the film. She's the rosebud of the film. She's her character is what drives the plot of the film. Now, she looks ridiculous out there in her slight feminine frame, prancing around in the middle of the Trojan War. But her character is the conscience of the film. In fact, at the end of the movie, and yes, spoiler alert, I'm giving away all kinds of spoilers because I want to save you from seeing it. All right. At the end of the film, it undoes the ending of Homer's poem. At the ending of the poem, Odysseus returns home. It's very similar to Gladiator, a Greco-Roman story of, redemptive revenge. And that's what happens at the end of the poem is that Odysseus, resumes his throne, takes the kingship. In this film, he gives it up. He abdicates it. And he does so because his conscience is so impacted by all the...
That's really funny that he says that he abdicates the throne because, when I first read the Odyssey in junior high school, when I was in junior high school, the movie that came out in the 90s, so we got to watch the movie after we studied the piece of literature, and there was clearly a longing for home. I mean, the whole point was Odysseus is trying to get home. He loves his family. He loves his country. He wants his throne. And when he gets back, he kills everybody because, Antinous is abusing the queen or, wants to usurp. And so the fact, spoiler, that he gives up, he abdicates his throne, it reminds me of should I give this? Yeah, I'll tell this story. So this is like a new thing that this is a reoccurring theme. It's a reoccurring theme of the left and what they're doing. So I give you a little backstory. I met my wife in a stage play of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. And I was cast as Prince Charming, and she was cast as Cinderella. And we have a great story for our grandkids, right? How we met. And so Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, obviously, we did that show together. We're very familiar with the play. And so a couple of years ago, some theater, I don't even know where, was putting on this play. So we're like, hey, let's go see this. Let's go reminisce about the circumstances of how we fell in love in this play. And so we went, and it had been updated, which is not uncommon. A lot of times people will update an older show for Broadway. They might add a few numbers here and there, maybe expand on some different parts and that sort of thing. And boy, did they ever in the updated versions of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. And what they did was they had a communistic revolutionary in the village, and they created a whole new love interest between this communist revolutionary who likes to read a lot of books and is trying to stand up for the people's rights. They created a love interest between that guy and one of the stepsisters in Cinderella. One of the evil stepsisters? No, now one of them is good. One of them is good. Okay. And so the whole time you've got the traditional Cinderella Prince Charming arc going on. And then at the very end, after Cinderella and Prince Charming, do their thing, we found a glass slipper, everything's good. Okay, we're in love. Well, now here comes the communist revolutionary who has somehow made good with the prince, who, says that these are the people's grievances. And the prince is so touched and overwhelmed, not by the newfound love that he has, but by the concerns of the communist revolutionary. So the prince, at the end of the updated version of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, abdicates his throne and calls for elections. He calls for elections, and the show ends. And I was sitting there like, what is wrong with people? Like, what is wrong with this need to take a classic work and modernize it to fit your communistic ends? That's what Angel Studios did with Animal Farm. They made it into a critique of capitalism instead of a critique of communism. And it's so forced, it's so contrived. You understand exactly what's going on. And it would be like me editing plays and putting at the end of a play a gospel presentation, right? Like, that's the equivalent, because it is a religion to these people. It would be the equivalent of like me editing Rodgers and Hammerstein and the Cinderella play, and then at the end of the show, he finds Cinderella. They're going to get married, and then he looks at Cinderella and looks at the rest of the village and says, "Now let me tell you about the gospel of Jesus Christ and his ability to save sinners." You would say, "Well, that doesn't make it. That's out of nowhere. That doesn't make any sense at all." Like, we wouldn't do that because, and maybe we should, but it would be patently obvious what we're doing, and it has no place in the artistic work that we're portraying right here. And that's exactly what the left has done with all of these franchises, whether it's Star Wars or Indiana Jones or Lord of the Rings with the Rings of Power, all of that stuff, and now the Odyssey. And the Odyssey may be more subtle, but I don't know how you get more subtle. I don't think it's pretty overt when you take Odysseus, who's supposed to reassume the throne and render swift, bloody judgment against the suitors of his wife and kill them, to the point where he gets home and then abdicates his throne. That is absolutely subversive.
Terrible stuff he has seen in war, all the terrible stuff he has done, not the least of which is what he did to Ellen Page's character by setting her up to be part of the diversion that fooled Troy, or fooled Sparta, into accepting the Trojan horse. And when they visit the land of the dead, Ellen Page's character comes back from hell essentially to lecture Odysseus for this subterfuge that he did that cost her life. In other words, if you're looking at the symbolism here, Christopher Nolan wrote a film where the lead character, was just so despondent over what he did to the troon that he had to exile himself to reconsider all of his entire life choices. And I'm not making any of that up. Anne Hathaway has some kind of feminist diatribe about why the men won't let her assume the throne, given all the wisdom she's accumulated as queen. The cast is jarring. John Leguizamo, I thought, did a great job, but if that's Helen of Troy, I'm Aunt Jemima. Okay, seeing the guy who was in the Bollywood guy who was in that Beatles movie a few years ago, which I absolutely love that movie, but seeing him as kind of the first mate of Odysseus just did not work whatsoever. And a lot of the casting choices, frankly, it would be like watching some kind of like redneck play the tribal chieftain in Shaka Zulu, or some kind of Mexican, playing a shogun, in the ancient Far East. It's distracting, and it takes away from the story. The best you could say is that this was some kind of attempt to Hamilton the cast. But I think, given the overall dialogue and storyline of this film, I think it's way more intentionally subversive than that. The Cyclops looks great. That's the second greatest scene in the film. You've probably already seen the greatest scene in the film, since they let the Trojan horse out already. What happens in between a lot of those scenes, frankly, it just is not noteworthy. It's not worth ever seeing again. I wouldn't even call this the Temu Gladiator. It couldn't hold Gladiator's jockstrap. And I was just deeply disappointed. And it was very clear to me, Christopher Nolan was attempting to not make Western civilization more accessible. The film's very secular. The gods, there's almost no supernatural activity in the film at all, when it's a highlight of Homer's poem. This is an attempt not to bring modern audiences to Homer, but to modernize Homer instead. for our choices, our designs, the modern audience motif and trope that has nearly destroyed Hollywood here for the last 5 years. In many respects, it's kind of symbolic that the film's greatest scene is the Trojan horse, because a Trojan horse is, quite frankly, what this film is.
Again, that's Steve Dace and his take on it. In the chat, we got Nira89 says, they ruined it on purpose, so sad, won't go see it. Yeah, I kind of conflicted on like motivations. I think some people ruin it on purpose, but then I do think there is, at some point, it's now a part of their nature to ruin it. So it's not on purpose as much as it's who they are. They're incapable of doing their jobs as artists the way even liberal Hollywood used to be able to do their jobs as artists. And they could take a source material and put it to screen. This is who they are incapable. Some of them, a lot of it is intentional, yes, but some of them, they're incapable of not. This is who they are. This is their instinct now. They have to put their religion to subvert works that are, part of our history, part of who we are. I mean, if they remade the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston today, obviously absent Charlton Heston, they would rewrite the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not judge members of the LGBTQ, is what they would literally just rewrite the commandments. Is what they would do. And then we have, let's see, I have a follow-up on that. So Emily Wilson, whose translation of the Odyssey was one of the basics, I think, for Christopher Nolan's adaptation, where you just heard Steve Dace talk about they emphasized not Odysseus' cunning wit or his verbose attitude. Maybe you would call him a little bit arrogant. Instead, they emphasized his shame over his heroic glory. I want you to listen to this interview with Emily Wilson.
What did you think about the film in terms of this notion of the Odyssey as an anti-war text?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought I want to, not spoil anything about the film, because I know the majority of people haven't seen the film. The film has these flashbacks to the Trojan War. I'm not sure if I see it as an entirely anti-war film, but it certainly presents us with an Odysseus who feels very bad about certain things that he's done in war and is struggling to process them in a very, I would say, very modern psychiatrized way. And he's struggling to process them and needs drugs to do so for help with his recovery.
Right.
And he seems to feel bad about being a warrior, and we never actually get to see him doing much warrioring, which I thought in a way was a bit of a shame. I mean, we do get to see the boat, which is lovely, but I think in some ways, I was realizing, thinking about the film, there's a tolerance for ambiguity in the world of the Odyssey, which I don't think there exactly is in the world of Hollywood blockbuster action films.
Right.
And I think that's one of the big challenges for Nolan, right?
Yeah.
Is that he has to make the protagonist a likable all-American hero,
right?
Which is a real challenge if you're basing this on a poem where the hero is not necessarily motivated by romantic love or being a nice suburban parent, but actually by...
You can just hear their disdain for the world as it is. The world as it is their problem. Reality itself is their problem. And they want to change it. It's a weird way. It's like artistic terraforming. They want to terraform our minds so that they can hope to change human nature, and our history, and subverting our history and everything else. It's really, really sad and pathetic. Speaking of sad and pathetic, There was a Florida student who was arrested. Let's see if we can get this. Do we have the actual Washington Post? Hang on.
No, please don't.
I don't know if we have the Washington Post actual link. Hang on one second. Yeah. 1 day ago, let's see, Florida. This is the Australian. Never heard of this place. They have the video. It's just a video. I was wanting to write up on it. Stop misgendering me. No, it's just a video that's gone viral. So it's a body cam. Here we go. Yeah. Fox News has it. Trans student tased, arrested after pronoun meltdown. The New York Post basically just took the footage. So Rob always likes to say that the whole trans thing is surrounded in mental illness. Obviously, he's right. Watch this.
Stop mass gangling me!
What's the problem?
Why do you let those kids get away with this? They are not supposed to be here!
If you don't lower your voice, I am going to put handcuffs on you and I'm going to take you to a Baker Act facility. You lower your voice.
Try it.
Are you threatening me? Can we get another unit to deal with Jay Lee here? He is having a breakdown.
Say! Just say the right pronoun!
What do you say?
7351.
Get down on the ground right now.
No!
I mean, it just, honestly, it almost seems fake that somebody would be this unhinged and conform to the stereotype so perfectly. He gets called he, and
are you threatening me? Can we get another unit to deal with Jay Lee here? He is having a breakdown.
Say! Just say the right pronoun!
What do you say?
7351.
Get down on the ground right now.
No!
You're about to get sprayed.
No,
Get down on the ground right now.
Leave me alone!
I can come in there.
Leave me alone, please!
Okay, are you going to calm down?
I want to be away from him.
It's too late now. It's too late now. He's going to be taken away.
Say!
Bailey, you need to stop.
It's taken.
I just want to get away from him.
I understand that.
He needs
Say! Stop mass gangling me! Just say she!
whatever you do, officer, do not say she.
Please step in. Watch your head.
Do not push me.
Good on that officer for just continuing to affirm basic reality and not give in to the delusion. So this is a moment where you say this person. I mean, we could sit here and we could make fun, or and obviously, that's low hanging fruit. This is a person that needs mental help. And I would say spiritually, obviously, like that's the base. This person needs spiritual help, right? He is very confused and is crazy and has such a delusion that he's thinks it's perfectly reasonable to behave in that manner, all because the officer will not affirm his lifestyle. And so these people are everywhere in varying degrees. Obviously, maybe not all like that, but it is a wake up call that this is a serious problem. And honestly, with the detransitioners and the lawsuits coming down and the hospitals and doctors that are going to end up having to pay so much money for what they've done, and yet we have a Republican Senate and a Republican House that still has not passed a simple standalone bill that says that the genital mutilation of children, that transing kids and calling it healthcare is illegal and it's child abuse, and if you do it, you're going to go to you're going to fall under the child abuse statutes, whatever that would entail. Good grief. I mean, B-Hop, steal his lunch money for a few months. RL5 Trucker says, kid needed a big hug, blame his parents. Carl Benji, picking up on my spiritual comment. Demon got that person. We've got NJV3657 says, he thinks words are violence. That's what he's been told. Let's see, what else do we have? So Dave 357 Max says, the left created that person and all other violent, entitled lunatics thinking it's okay to behave this way. Shelly 11067 says, I'm waiting for these kids to start suing their parents. Now, that would be an interesting exercise in jurisprudence to see if that could even happen. You raise a good point. You become an adult, 18, and you realize that your parents clapped like seals and encouraged you to take the hormones or, God forbid, get the surgery. You may have a point. Nira89, make mental institutions great again. We need to check and see if the mental institutions have any patients in them. Then we'll know why this is happening. And then Alexander 18, parents who force their children to wear masks for 8 hours a day need mental health as well. When you hide your child's smile, disguise their identity, and silence their voices, there is going to be issues. At the height when the airlines, matter of fact, I know exactly what you meant. I never put a mask on my child because I thought it was so dehumanizing, and I just refused to do it because I just didn't conform, to the point where we had a family trip, and some people flew, and I said, you know what? I'm driving because I'm just not putting a mask on her. They still had the mask mandates while you were on board the airplane. And I said, we're going to drive because I refused. I refused to put my daughter in a situation where she's going to have to wear a mask, and we have to have that conversation and explain all that to her, all for a political symbol, all to get from point A to point B. No thanks. No thanks. Anyway, folks, that's all the time that we have for this edition of the Paul Harrell program. And I will see you. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll be here with bells on. Going to have a great time. Really do appreciate you being with us. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors: Red Vive Health, New Horizon Real Estate, Gateway Sight and Sound, Pet Club 24/7, and Sherrod Chiropractic. And also want to remind you that the Paul Harrell program is powered by the Healing Veterans Project, lighting the path to wellness. Go make your donation today at healingveteransproject.us. That's healingveteransproject.us. And we will get them their red light panels that are doctor prescribed, that the VA just won't give them. That's all the time we have. We'll see you tomorrow.